Welcome, y'all. We're really glad to have you today at our Dementia webinar series, Enjoying Holidays with Cognitive Issues. My name's Ashley Varner. I'm one of the clinical social workers in the Cognitive Neurology Clinic, and I'm joined today by my colleagues, Alice Cooper and Debbie Arnold, both of whom also work in the Cognitive Neurology Clinic and have various other responsibilities as well. Debbie is our speaker today. She's an incredibly seasoned clinical social worker who has worked mostly with older adults for her whole career. And we're really, really lucky to have her speaking to us today. This is a webinar series, and so the webinar format is that you can definitely put your questions and answers in the Q&A section that's at the bottom of your screen if you're on a computer. And we will have a chance to answer those at the end. We'll have about 15 minutes at the end for questions and answers. But you will not be able to be heard or to speak and you're not seen. I think that covers most of what it is. In December, I will give a coming attraction. In December, we will be meeting on the 13th of December for this webinar series, and the topic will be guardianship and conservatorship. There's been lots and lots of questions about that recently, so we'll have an attorney coming to speak about guardianship and conservatorship, how to avoid them, and if they're unavoidable, what's involved in that process. But for today, Debbie's going to talk to us about enjoying holidays with cognitive issues. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Debbie.
Thank you. So I work most of my time in the Cognitive Empowerment Program, which is a research project jointly with Georgia Tech, where people with a diagnosis of mild cognitive impairment and their care partners practice evidence-based practices and learn about nutrition and compensatory cognitive strategies and do yoga and everything. But I have really tried to capture in my talk today individuals with more than a mild impairment, and also really the perspective of the care partners. And although we're heading into the holiday season here in November, I also encourage you to think about this as a framework for celebrating special occasions in general. So we know that structure and routine are really important for individuals with even mild cognitive impairment, and frankly, even folks who don't have any cognitive impairment. Life is a lot less stressful if I put my keys in the same place each time, and all of us generally function better if we basically go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time most days. So we know that there are benefits to structure and routine, but we don't want every day to be exactly the same. And having special occasions is special. So we want to be able to celebrate important occasions and add life to our days. I also want to say that I'm not going to really lecture you, because you're the expert on your life and you're the expert on the person that you support. And even if I told you what worked well for me in my life, it might not work that well for you. So really try to just consider this as a framework and take the parts that might work for you and leave the rest. And we know that holidays are, if we're honest, equal parts joyful and stressful. Complicated feelings will show up. We have fantasies ahead of time. that it's all going to be sparkly and bright and joyous, and kind of there's a lot of pressure also uh, to have a great holiday season, to really surpass all the other years, or to have them be as great as they've always been, and to do traditions just right. But the truth is, sometimes there are a lot of other feelings that turn up too, and it's not uncommon for people to get various shades of blue during the holidays. We really miss the people that we wanted to share the holidays with, but for whatever reason, we're not able to be together this year. Maybe they're gone, or maybe travel is uh, not realistic for them. And so it's important to own those feelings and to be honest with yourselves. Dr. Lindsay Prizer used to say to us, don't should all over yourself, right? It's the holidays. I should be happy. I should be joyous. But if we're not so happy and joyous, we feel guilty, or, other ways that are just not that great. So consider what celebrations have always been your personal favorites, and the particular traditions and rituals or specific foods that for you or for your person really feel like they're going to make or break a holiday or a special occasion. I always give the example of my nephew who doesn't care for birthday cake, and for his birthday to be the celebration of his dreams, there has to be the giant cookie. It's not really going to matter how old he gets. He's always going to want the giant cookie that says happy birthday on it. And for some of us, there are foods or songs that are unique to our cultural heritage. Even when gifts are exchanged or opened, might vary from one family to another. People from Great Britain celebrate Boxing Day, which is the day after Christmas. People who celebrate Hanukkah may have one small present each of the 8 nights, versus one, big giant thing under a tree. And some people celebrate unusual holidays. My brother-in-law was a mathematician, and his favorite holiday was Pi Day. So 3.14, March the 14th. And we all had to eat pie. So everybody's going to have their own personal favorites. It's also really important to consider how cognitive issues have already impacted some gatherings. So as you go into the holiday season, you might reflect on some other recent celebrations. Maybe there was a milestone anniversary or a big birthday, and getting everybody together on that occasion, you really learned the hard way what worked and what didn't work. So really give that some consideration, because your lived experience is probably the best rule of thumb going forward. And it's going to be a little bit of a moving target too. This picture, I really like this idea of the gathering outside. And it is a little bit hard sometimes for us to sort out the ways in which cognitive issues have impacted our gatherings from the ways in which the ripple effects of the COVID pandemic may have also impacted our gatherings. Maybe certain get-togethers have not been able to happen, or they've been on a much smaller scale. Travel was definitely impacted by the pandemic. And when we consider lived experience about recent gatherings, we also have to make a place for what I call the what ifs. So oftentimes our anxieties about how something will go are just as real as something that didn't go well for us before. So really being honest with yourself as you go into the holidays. What are you worried about? Is there some disinhibition? Am I concerned that my loved one with dementia may say or do things or have behaviors that will be embarrassing or make other people uncomfortable in some way? Maybe, uh-oh, just whether they will, remember the names that go with the faces. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but at the same time, um, you know, being able to be your full authentic self um, is the best way to relax and enjoy any occasion. Some families tell us they basically have two groups of friends or relatives, the people that they've told or who really get what they're dealing with in terms of this cognitive diagnosis, and then the others. So we definitely want people to be able to relax and not be on guard. What could happen? So a lot of this is going to have to do with planning ahead. And I have plan ahead, but don't get married to your plan A, right? So equal parts planning and flexibility, which is really hard. I am perfectly honest about the fact that this is a big task. So planning ahead means trying to avoid or manage stress proactively as much as possible. So you might set aside time and actually schedule days for shopping, days for cooking, days that you're available to receive visitors or to go just, other folks' homes. And managing stress proactively. I mean, if you look up stress in the dictionary, there's holiday travel, right? So we all know these are some of the busiest days and times to try to get from point A to point B on the expressway or to navigate through a busy airport and go through security. So really anticipating and trying to travel on the days that are not the very busiest. That someone told me if you can travel on New Year's Eve, almost nobody wants to be going through the airport during, New Year's Eve. You know yourself and the person that you support best. You know your comfort zone, right? We all have a comfort zone, and various factors play a role when it comes to socializing, even with close family. So hearing loss, dietary concerns, just temperament. Are you an introvert? And we know that when there is cognitive decline, what tends to happen is that the comfort zone gets somewhat narrower. So we definitely are looking to minimize stress and to recognize that the usual suspects bother the person more and sooner. So I don't know what the usual suspects for you are, but I can tell you some examples I've heard from the folks in our program. Maybe at one of their adult children's home, the kids tend to run around screaming after having way too much dessert. Seems that by the time the dessert table is in action, the adults are just kind of done supervising those kids, and the kids have free access to as much sugar as they want. So these folks told me they just, plan around that and they try to get out of there before that starts happening. Another house, maybe nutritious food is sort of an afterthought, but, there's really a focus on the adult beverages. So you just have to sort of know what you know about the people and places that you tend to celebrate these holidays with. Care partners also run out of steam. Sometimes just getting to a gathering, you're navigating through traffic and you're trying to get out of the house appropriately dressed for the occasion. And you might be exhausted by the time you arrive at the party. So considering what kind of self-care you might need as a care partner is proactively. So this slide actually I borrowed from the yoga teacher here at the Cognitive Empowerment Program, Megan Nair. And she talks about the ABCs of holiday self-care for the person with a cognitive diagnosis, but also for our care partners. So awareness of how you feel, awareness of your stress level, and awareness of the talk inside your head. I'm not alleging that we're hearing voices, but we all have a narrator who, sometimes can be harsh and sometimes gives us really good information. Awareness means kind of checking in with yourself. If I wait until I am at my limit and I'm all peopled out, and I just have to get out of there, that's not fun. That's not a successful outing. But if I notice the signs of stress showing up, maybe I'm gripping my steering wheel really tightly on my way there. Maybe my shoulders are really tight and up around my ears, or if I pay attention to my breath, I'm breathing shallowly. I'm breathing as if I'm anxious. I'm breathing as if I'm stressed out. And breathing that way will make me feel stressed out, even if other things are going basically okay. So I have to remind myself, have a deep breath. It also means identifying what kind of downtime might be restorative for you and the person that you support. It's not going to be the same for everyone. Balance. We're striving for balance in as many areas as possible. So this means the days that we're busy and we have plans, we're socializing and we have structured activity. It might be work, it might be travel, versus the downtime, the days that are sort of a flop day where you wear your comfy pants and you relax. But we can't necessarily have socializing planned every single day during the holiday season without knowing that we'll be overdone. Consider balance also might mean the primary caregiver plans ahead that someone else can attend to the needs of the person that they support for at least part of a day or part of a visit, so that they get a break. Balance can also mean participating in holiday celebrations without breaking all of the general rules that we've learned help us to feel our best. When I worked in geriatrics, I learned that the emergency room is a really busy place the day after Thanksgiving, for the simple reason that everybody abandons their low-salt diets. So that was really eye-opening for me. And then we can't expect to feel great if we break all the rules that we know help us feel good, as far as our sleep hygiene and exercise and making sure that we're hydrated. It also means balance is about getting honest that the needs of the person living with a dementia or a cognitive impairment may be different than the care partner this year. And can you balance these different needs? An example someone gave us was that the care partner's childhood best friend was in town visiting their family, but by the time the care partner had time to visit with them, the person that they supported was just really done socializing. And so they had some hard decisions to make. And I'm not trying to raise your anxiety about these things, but it's important that connection to friends and family and community be in balance and in a way that supports you and reduces stress. We know that connection is much better for us than isolation, but being intentional about it really allows it to have those benefits. Giving yourself a permission to take a break is really important, and being able to do this without declaring that it's a bad day or feeling defeated is equally important. So whether the celebration is at your house or someone else's, remember that everything tends to work better after you unplug it for a little while, and human beings are no exception. So whatever recharges your battery, it might be sitting in the car listening to the radio, eating some healthy snack that you brought versus gorging on sugar. It might be, getting a little fresh air and seeing if there are any different birds than you see at your bird feeder, whatever it might be for you. For some people, it's going to be watching a sporting event on TV. I've heard. So I talked about the complicated feelings that can show up during the holidays. And what I mean by complicated feelings are these 4 F's, the fantasies, the family, the food, and the finances tend to bring on the holiday blues and blahs. So I wanted to really focus on these and talk really specifically about them and how we cope. So you'll see by fantasies, I have a little asterisk that leads you to this Norman Rockwell Thanksgiving picture, which actually I learned in preparing this. It's called freedom from want. So having a full Thanksgiving table. But the fantasies of the magical memories, or that all of us should be celebrating holidays the way they do in the Norman Rockwell picture, really are a recipe for disappointment. It's, we have all had some holidays go really well and some holidays that were more stress than anything. And when we look back and all of the holidays were just perfect, it's usually because distance and time have lent enchantment to that view, right? But being kind of honest with yourself about what your fantasies of the holiday are can be important to avoiding disappointment. You might have hopes, and that's fine. I hope that I'm going to see so-and-so. I hope that this one doesn't have too much to drink, but all we can do is hope. And the fantasy that it's all going to be like it is in the Norman Rockwell picture, maybe not so much. They're not showing us the greasy dishes, right? So for many people, family is not very easily defined or described. And families can be separated and blended, and you might have a chosen family that you're closer to. Um, some families are two for the price of one, meaning because of separation or divorce, remarriage, you know, people are expected to celebrate at more than one household. I know a lot of folks who have, you know, dinner in shifts. We eat main course over here, we go there for dessert, just so that the people that don't get along well don't have to be in the same place at the same time. But that's a lot of work for a lot of other people. Rivalries and roles and other established patterns can be really stressful. They can be hard to move past. So trying to be mindful that uh, we can't control anyone else's behavior. The thing we have agency over is our own reactions. And when we're feeling reactive, then we have to figure out how we recharge, reminding ourselves to have that deep breath before responding, or walk outside and look at the leaves on the trees for a minute, if that's an option. So feelings of loneliness or loss can show up. It's not unusual at all, but good self-care means owning those feelings and figuring out what to do about them without being too reactive in the moment. We talked a little bit about food and the food choices that we make. Sometimes it's easier to have moderation if you pregame with some healthy snacks on the way to a gathering. But we all know that overdoing comfort foods can lead to discomfort. And it's not a treat when you skip all of your healthy habits. And finally, finances, right? We are bombarded by seasonal consumerism, and being present always beats giving presents. We tend to overspend when we feel disconnected from people. We get anxious and guilty about money this time of year. So it's important to factor this in when you're trying to be proactive about managing stress. We all know that the kids get a bad case of the gimme gotchas because it's all over TV. I want this thing and I want that thing, and my friend has these electronic toys that will be obsolete this time next year, right? And finally, I do want to say that if you find yourself or someone you care about feeling persistently sad or anxious, irritable or hopeless, to really seek professional support, to use 988, which is the mental health hotline, or to message your provider, because depression and seasonal affective disorder are real and they're dangerous, and you don't have to feel that bad. So where do my friends and family fit in? Well, it's pretty typical that some families feel compelled to continue doing things in ways that are no longer a good fit. And what I want to say about this is it may have nothing to do with cognitive impairment. A lot of families feel that they have to celebrate the holidays the way they always have, to continue traditions, to keep the peace, or because other people may struggle with change. The last one, I think, is more specific to a diagnosis of cognitive impairment. We want the picture to be the Norman Rockwell picture, the all is well, everything is fine, for as long as possible. But sometimes that takes an awful lot of energy. And that's energy we really need for other things at this point. So even the sparkly days might not be retained. And, that's just the reality of a cognitive impairment. So planning ahead is really important to do with family and friends in mind. Will you be seeing some people for the first time in a long while? Are they aware that some cognitive or behavioral changes may have progressed since the last time they saw the person? We may really prefer to have the, capital C conversations in person, but that's not terribly realistic in a big gathering. So sometimes planning ahead and being proactive in managing stress might mean having a phone call with a couple of people ahead of time, or even sending a group email. We had one family send out a group email that just said, this is what, it was pretty brief, but this is what's been going on. And call me if you have any questions, but I just wanted people to know because it will help me going into this gathering if everybody kind of knows what we need. Particularly if you might need some accommodations from the host. Will there be a quiet space that we might be able to use so other people can take turns coming in and visiting with the person living with dementia, and they don't have to kind of confront a big crowd of people all at once. Planning ahead also might mean, just having a short script, 1 or 2 sentences that you're comfortable with that describes this. You don't need to give, the whole medical dossier. We've had this testing and that testing, and these markers are showing up. But you do, just want to be honest with people. This is what we're dealing with. Yes, if you're noticing changes, there have been some changes. But we also know that other people will say and do dumb things. They don't mean to, they can't help it. But it sometimes presents an opportunity to educate them. And sometimes you don't feel like taking that opportunity at a holiday party. But, once a conversation happens, maybe after the gathering, sometimes that creates a possibility of expanding a support system. We had no idea. What do you need? How can we be supportive? Maybe other people are open to sharing certain responsibilities, and try and have something in mind too. If someone says, how can we help? Be specific. We could really use help with driving. We could really use a ride here or there. Changes do happen, but they don't have to happen to you. If you have a certain holiday china that you want to use, whoops, I'm going back and back. Sometimes having just using the platter or the gravy boat of grandma's china can be representative, and otherwise we can save the planet next month. We can use paper goods, adjusting our expectations and having prepared menu items, rather than having all of the pies be homemade this year. Try to modify your plan so that it's reasonable and realistic for you. And if you're hosting, be prepared for people to ask what they can do or bring. Considering potential alternate scenarios, has anyone maybe had, a virtual gathering during COVID? There were pros and cons to this, even though being separate is certainly not the same as, sharing a hug and, passing meal around family style. Um, there were opportunities for people to visit from the other side of the country or the other side of the world, even if it's just, to raise a glass together and see each other on a screen. It definitely is not the same thing as being together, but there is an opportunity to connect in that way. And sometimes just, singing a holiday song together virtually with the grandkids on the other side of the country can be a nice experience. I often include this slide when I talk because I think it is a great way of visually representing the need for communication to be really intentional. No one can read your mind unless you tell them what you're thinking. Likewise, your side of the mountain may look really different from somebody else's, and you're not going to know what it looks like on the other side unless you ask them. So the December dilemmas is a phrase that therapists use talking about interfaith family issues, like should we have a Christmas tree or a Hanukkah menorah, or maybe we should have both. But the truth is that there are often important differences just below the surface in families that are not interfaith, and even in families that are extremely close. It's really common for some folks in a family to feel really attached to longstanding cultural or religious practices, and maybe others are, ready to do things a little bit differently. So it's important to be talking about this and tune into your honest feelings so that you can find a way of navigating the holidays comfortably. And I found this forging new traditions, and I thought I really liked it, but gosh, forging sounded like so much work, right? Like I'm gonna get out my torch and my anvil and I'm gonna be hammering hot metal. But once I read more about it, it really isn't that much work because it's not about reinventing a wheel from scratch, right? Holiday traditions it's just usually an adjustment of the existing practices and a little tweaking here and there. The example I liked was one family saying they were going to celebrate Happy Noon Year. Then they got this idea from their grandkids' preschool, but they said, I really prefer not to drive at night. The other drivers may be under the influence, and the person that I support with dementia is not really good in the evening, but they're better earlier in the day. And we're going to just count down and say Happy New Year in the middle of the day. And I loved that. And they invited folks over to raise a glass, and that really worked for them. So I thought that sounded like a lot less work than getting out my torch and my anvil. And then, also kind of keeping in mind that you're tweaking things as you go, right? Once you see how Thanksgiving goes, maybe you make some different plans going into the December holidays. Maybe going out to somebody else's home goes well. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you prefer to have folks come over. Maybe making everything yourself works well, and maybe you prefer to have it more potluck for the next holiday. So that's where I'm saying, plan ahead, but don't be married to plan A. Um, it's a work in progress, and dementia is always going to be a moving target. But people with neurocognitive disease and their care partners do continue to experience joy in connection and to celebrate good times with the people who love them. And this is really important. It just takes a bit of planning and flexibility. And that's what I got.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for that. I mean, it's such good information, so many good tips that you've given. And so when I know people have with all the holidays, different things coming up. And like you said, it's not just about holidays, it's any type of events that, we need to be thinking about these things and how to help our loved one and how to help ourselves through the crazy sometimes. Right now, we would have some questions. Do we have any questions from the audience? I don't see a whole lot, but please go ahead and put them in the Q&A. But Debbie, there is one that we have right now about how do we help our loved one who doesn't want to go to a holiday party or an event because they're scared people will notice and they haven't told anyone.
Mm-hmm. So, at the Cognitive Empowerment Program, we spend a lot of time talking about this. And it is not easy. We do have some kind of guidelines that when you think about having these conversations, kind of to imagine a bullseye and to start with the people closest to you. These are the people who, if they had something like this going on, your feelings might be hurt if they didn't share it with you. And to start there. And it does get easier once you talk to one or two people about this. It does get easier. Also, it's not an all or nothing conversation. You don't have to be prepared to tell people, I've had a diagnosis of whatever, and this is the prognosis, and these are the things that are hardest for me, and this is the doctor that I see and the medicine that I take. That's a lot of personal health information, and you don't have to be ready to, give everybody the password to your MyChart and tell them everything, especially when you think about, young kids, right? So sometimes it's enough to just tell them, I'm having trouble with names, and I'm sorry if I, don't call you by the right name, because that's how it will show up for them, right? And it's normal for an individual with a diagnosis of cognitive impairment to feel really self-conscious and to feel like everything is different now. But the people who love you still love you, and that has not changed. And they typically want to be there for you, and they're going to ask you how they can do that going forward.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions right now? Debbie, you said in the beginning how, you're not the expert in terms of people's families, and that there are the expert. And so was wondering, we're going to kind of throw this out since this is a conversation a little bit, even though you're just putting it in the Q&A. What have you done in terms of the audience, our participants? What have you done to help navigate the holidays? What have you found to be helpful? We do have a question. While you guys are putting that in, please put in what you've done in terms of your person. A question has come in. How do you get, the question is, how do you have people who say they want to help? How do you actually get them to help, to commit? What's a great way to get them to actually follow through? I think on the commitment, that's what the question is asking, on the days and times that you really need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think I think these are conversations, you know, that they need to know the assignment, right? People need to understand their job description in order to really make that commitment. And so the more specific you can be about that, the better. You know, we're going to be coming on this date through this date, and I'd really like a couple of hours in a row, either this day or this day, that I can go and, you know, see whoever, do whatever without my person. This is when I'm really going to need companionship for my person. They enjoy, you know, walking outdoors if the weather cooperates. They might enjoy going to a movie. They might enjoy looking at photo albums, you know, whatever you know about how to structure the time. But if it's companionship that you're asking for, say that. If it's a ride somewhere, say that. If it's, you know, a place to spend the night, and, you know, it'll go better for us if we have a private bathroom available to us. As specific as you can be, I think the people who are offering help will be able to really answer honestly, yes, I can do that, or you know, I cannot.
All right. Go ahead, Ashley. You're on mute.
Debbie, that was such a great presentation. Thank you so much. One of the questions that I wanted to throw out there was something that I hear a lot is the varying cultural ideas about mild cognitive impairment and dementia. And they vary dramatically, and to some extent, culture equals family, right? Every family has its own idea about what these things are. And each of us as a person do, but I will often hear, you know, my in-laws will think I'm crazy. They don't understand about dementia. They just think it's being crazy. And I'm wondering if either of you or anybody in the audience today has really good sources of information and ways to educate that can make people feel a little more comfortable in sharing what's going on, and have it be less about being crazy and more about it's an illness. And, you know, any of us have the capacity to develop an illness.
Yeah, I don't have any, like, you know, I want to be honest and say I don't have any specific resources. I would look to the Alzheimer's Association website. I think they have some frequently asked questions, and that is a common misconception. And, you know, I guess my short answer is education is always my antidote to ignorance, and just to say, you know, well, we know more now, and I can direct you to this information, but we can't open other people's minds when there are really ingrained ideas. The other thing that I hear is that families may think cognitive issues are kind of an all or nothing thing. Particularly when a dementia has run in the family. And in the past, we have closeted people who have had dementia, and it has gotten severe before anybody is really aware of it. So hearing that there's any cognitive impairment can be scary for relatives, because they think even a mild cognitive impairment equals an advanced dementia. And it's, it blows them out of the water. And so really educating our families about, we know more now, and we're diagnosing these conditions earlier. We're beginning to have some treatment options. We have some lifestyle interventions that we feel can slow down the progression. And, we're really hoping that that this doesn't get super bad. This is where we are now. And so as much as you can, share what you know and open people's minds a little bit.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Ashley, I think that's a really good question, though, and that I would love to collect some resources for our families.
We'll do it. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for coming today. I hope if you're interested in guardianship and conservatorship issues that you'll attend next month. Debbie, thank you so much for this incredible presentation. It's one that we're going to store. Also, as a reminder, these dementia webinar series segments are now available on YouTube. I sent it out to the whole mailing list, the whole listserv mailing list, the link that to be able to subscribe to that YouTube channel. And it's gotten quite a few views, so apparently y'all did receive it, but just know that you can always go back and catch the ones now that you missed. And it goes back all 3 years that we've had the series. Thanks so much for coming.